Families in Action, brought to you by your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.
Hey, did you see that? David Ibarra is out in the lobby, and he's afraid to come in here. I asked him to come in and participate. David. He's afraid to come in. I know. You know what? Never mind. Awesome. I won't even get into that. But go on, Bob. I know. He's a coward. What are you going to say?
You're killing me. So where were we before we went on the break? We're
still at going into middle school. Yeah.
We were, and I think it's really, really important to get that message out. Is that that is the age that most people start. That is the age, man. 12, 13, 14 years old.
If you have a kid, if you have a kid, speak to him anyways. Talk to him about all the stuff that's hard to talk about, the drugs, the sex, the violence, the dating. These are things that we as parents have to talk to our kids about over and over and over and over again. Not once.
Exactly.
But especially, come on, if they're leaving elementary school and they're going now into middle school.
Right.
Talk to your kids.
But they look so young and innocent, Cary. They're not good. Come on.
You know what's all and the crazy thing, all these bad things that happen to our kids start innocently.
Of course they do. Yeah, I mean, you were talking about contracts, right? It starts with me wanting to fit in, and so I take a hit off that cigarette.
It could be a hit off a cigarette. It could be a date.
Yep.
That goes sour or ends up somebody being pregnant.
Right.
I mean, there's all these conversations that, especially 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, you really have to educate your kid. If they don't learn it from you, man, they're going to learn it from someone else.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we work a lot with those kids at that age, and there's a huge there's a big change that takes place, difference between a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old. They go in pretty innocent to junior high school at 12.
Oh yeah,
and by the time they're out of junior high school at 13 or 14 years old, you get these kids who think they know everything.
Well, they're not so innocent anymore either.
And they think they got.
But I will say this before we get into the high school thing. I'm dealing right now with four different kids that I know of under the age of 16 that are pregnant.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's it's not just and it's not always drugs and alcohol. A lot of times that's in combination with that stuff.
Right. Well, on a couple of them, yes. On the other two, none.
Right.
It's just bad choices.
Bad choices, and again, there's a lot of peer pressure involved in kids having sex and
not using protection,
of course,
and lack of even knowledge of consequences. They just don't get it. It's still fantasy.
Yeah, till it's real, right?
Then it becomes not a fantasy anymore.
So we see a lot of that at the junior high school level, but you get a lot of kids that by the time they get out of junior high school, they start to get this attitude that there's the adults, there's nothing you're going to tell me that I don't know. I know everything, kind of thing. And then they go into high school and they're hit with the reality of high school as well, right?
Here's where we blow it, though. They know everything because we stopped telling them.
Yeah, that's right.
We stopped talking to them.
Yeah.
So now they're hearing it from everybody else, and by the time they're 16, 17, and we want to talk to them, they don't want to hear it anymore.
Yeah, and it's
not that you shouldn't talk, but
no, keep talking to them on a constant basis. And one of the, you mentioned 16, 17-year-olds, and in today's world, with the, you call them drugs of opportunity, but some of the more serious drugs, right? Heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine, things like that.
Vicodin.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oxy.
never fail to mention the prescription medications, which is the biggest problem today.
Yeah,
the biggest problem.
What? Yeah, it actually more people die from prescription drugs than all other drugs.
From prescription drug overdoses, even than car accidents, right?
Yeah, even in car. For the first time in history, the last couple years, more people die from prescription overdoses or drug overdoses than car accidents.
From accidental drug overdoses.
And you know what? Where do you think your 15 and 16-year-old kids are getting their prescription drugs?
I tell you that one of the best advertisements, little plugs, and it wasn't around very long, but they used to have them on the bus things out here. Don't be your kid's drug dealer, and it was like a picture from the inside of a medicine cabinet, right?
I could see it.
And it was a young kid, I don't know, 11, 12, 13 years old, picking up one of the prescription pill bottles out of the medicine cabinet. It may seem like a little drastic or dramatic, but I certainly think in the world of drugs and alcohol, we should be drastic and dramatic, right? Is
I'll tell
lock them up like they're
you
guns.
know what's drastic and dramatic?
Yeah, I know. Two of them this week.
Is
Two
when
of them,
you go to a funeral.
Yeah.
That's pretty dramatic.
Yep. So treat your medications, treat your medications as if they were
I always say,
deadly, because they are.
Treat them as they're deadly. They are deadly.
Yeah.
Absolutely You're right, Bob. And you got to hear this. They are the most deadliest thing in your house.
Yeah.
And I hear from parents saying that, well, my kid wouldn't. What about their friends?
Yeah. Exactly.
You never know who would. These kids are getting their drugs from parents' homes. That's where they're getting them.
And they, I don't know that it's. I think it's a lot more prevalent today and a lot more available today than it ever has been. But I remember being at that age, you know what I mean? I remember being 13, 14, 15 years old, and we did the same thing.
Can you remember that?
I have a great memory.
I could just check it.
And the same thing back then, though. The kids would show up at school, and they'd have, look what I got. And they'd have some Valium or some pain pills or whatever, and look what I got from my mom or dad.
And we're getting kids ordered to our groups from the courts because they were selling dope at schools, drugs, pills. They were and they were their parents' pills.
Yep, exactly.
Hide your pills or get a safe. Don't give your combination out and lock them up.
Well, and think about the teenage years. It is in terms of kids growing up, it's a time when experimentation is what they do. Right. I'm not just talking drugs and alcohol. I'm talking all together. We experiment with different kinds of music. We experiment with different kinds of clothing, hairstyles, people that we hang out with, all of that stuff when we're teenagers. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like our job at that age is to find out where our place is in life.
Where we belong, yeah.
So there's a normalcy to kids wanting to check things out at that age. But and where it gets dangerous is when you're talking about drugs, alcohol, sex, all kinds of different things like that.
When we talk about break?
Let's talk about. I'm curious about break.
This is Families in Action on your local hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.